Hello, and welcome back to English in Fluency. I'm your host, Alex, and it's wonderful to have you here with me today. This is the place where we explore ideas that not only help you master the English language, but also help you grow as a person, to become more confident, more curious, and more connected to the world around you. I'm truly glad you've chosen to spend your time here. Today, we're going to dive deep into a topic that touches the heart of every single one of us, especially those of us who are learning and growing as adults. We're going to talk about a simple yet profound truth: the idea that you are never, ever too old to learn something new. Now, just by being here, by pressing play on this episode, you've already told me something very important about yourself. You have a desire to learn. You believe in improvement. Perhaps you're learning English to open new doors in your career, to find a better job that truly values your skills. Maybe you're dreaming of moving to a new country, to experience a different culture and build a new life. Or maybe your reason is beautifully simple. You're learning just for the pure joy of it, for the challenge and the satisfaction of expanding your own mind. Whatever your reason, it's an amazing and courageous thing to do. But let's be honest with each other for a moment. Learning as an adult can sometimes feel like an uphill battle, can't it? It can feel so much harder than it seemed when we were children. Our lives are full, packed with responsibilities, jobs, families, and 1,000 little things that demand our time and energy. And alongside all of that, we sometimes carry a heavy weight of self-doubt. Thoughts might drift into our minds, quiet whispers that say things like, "I should have started this years ago," or "Everyone else is so far ahead of me," and the big one, "I'm just too old to start now." Does any of that sound familiar? If it does, you are not alone. That is precisely why this episode is so important. I want to spend this time with you to remind you, and perhaps to gently convince you, that your age is not a barrier. It is not a wall that blocks your path. In fact, your age, with all the experience it carries, can be your greatest strength. Adult learners bring something truly special to their education. You bring the wisdom of life experience. You bring a powerful, focused motivation because you know exactly why you are learning. You have a clear reason, a purpose that drives you forward. That is an incredibly powerful force. We're going to explore all of this today. We'll talk about the fears that hold us back, the science that proves we can keep learning, and the inspiring stories of people who decided to begin again. My hope is that our time together will inspire you to keep going on your journey, or maybe, just maybe, it will give you the courage to start something completely new. So, let me ask you a question to begin our journey. When was the last time you did something for the very first time? Just take a moment and think about that. It doesn't have to be something huge. Maybe it was trying a new recipe you found online. Maybe it was gathering the courage to speak a little English with a stranger at a coffee shop. Or perhaps it was joining a new class, walking into a room full of new faces. Whatever it was, how did it make you feel? I'm guessing it was a mix of feelings. A little scary, perhaps. A little bit of anxiety. But also a little exciting. That beautiful, tingly mixture of fear and excitement, that is the space where learning happens. So often, We stop ourselves before we even have a chance to begin. We tell ourselves we are waiting for the perfect time. We'll start when things at work calm down. We'll start when the kids are a little older. We'll start when we feel more ready, more confident. But here is a gentle truth. The perfect time is a myth. It almost never arrives. The real best time to start learning something is the moment the desire sparks within you. It's that moment when you think, "I'd love to know how to do that." That is the signal. You should start then, even if you feel uncertain, even if you're 30, or 40, or 50, or 70, or even older. Learning does not have an age limit. It doesn't belong only to children in classrooms. It belongs to you. It's a gift that you can choose to open at any stage of your life. So in this episode, I'm going to walk with you, step by step, through the doubts and the fears, through the motivations and the real-life stories that prove, beyond any doubt, that learning is possible for everyone, no matter the number on their birth certificate. You'll hear useful phrases and new words that you can weave into your daily English. But more than that, I hope you'll find ideas that you can reflect on long after our conversation ends. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Because your journey of growth isn't over. In fact, it might just be getting started. Have you ever found yourself on the edge of trying something new? Something you were genuinely excited about, and then, suddenly, a mysterious force pulled you back. Maybe you thought about joining a book club to practice your English, or signing up for a course on digital marketing, or even just picking up a guitar that's been gathering dust in the corner of your room. You felt that initial spark of interest, that little flame of motivation. But then, almost as quickly as it appeared, something inside your mind whispered, "No, not now. It's not the right time. Maybe later." This experience is incredibly common. It happens to all of us more often than we'd like to admit. And usually, when we dig deep, the reasons we give ourselves, being too busy or feeling too old, are just excuses. They are the simple stories we tell ourselves to hide a more complex truth. The real reason we stop often lives much deeper, inside our mindset, inside our hidden fears. Let's take a closer, more honest look at why we stop ourselves, especially as we get older. One of the biggest and most common barriers is self-doubt. It's that quiet, persistent voice in your head that whispers negative things. It says, "You're not smart enough for this," or "You'll never be as good as other people." Maybe you've had thoughts like, "My memory isn't what it used to be," or the classic, "It's just too late for me to learn this now." Self-doubt is sneaky. It doesn't shout at you. If it did, it would be easier to argue with. Instead, it whispers. It's subtle. It pretends that it's trying to protect you. It frames its message as a way to save you from potential embarrassment or failure. But in reality, what it's doing is stopping you from growing, from experiencing something new and wonderful. It's keeping you safely inside your comfort zone, where nothing changes and nothing new is learned. Another incredibly common barrier is the fear of failure. And to be perfectly honest, this fear makes a lot of sense in our adult world. When we are children, failure is a natural and expected part of learning. In fact, it's celebrated. A baby is expected to fall down hundreds of times while learning to walk. No one scolds the baby or tells them they are a failure. We clap, We cheer. We encourage them to get up and try again. A young child learning to speak will make thousands of grammar mistakes. They'll say things like, "I go to the store," instead of "I went." And what do? We find it cute. We gently correct them. We understand it's part of the process. No one thinks twice about it. But as adults, the rules seem to change. Society often expects us to be competent, to act like we know what we're doing at all times. This creates an enormous amount of pressure. The idea of making a mistake, of failing at something in front of other people, especially in a public setting, can feel terrifying. We think to ourselves, what if someone laughs at me? What if I look foolish or incompetent? This fear can be paralyzing. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever wanted to join a dance class? Or try something creative like painting, or singing, or maybe even learning to code? But you stopped yourself because you were worried about what other people would think? You imagined yourself being the slowest one in the class, the one who just couldn't get it right. You are not alone in this feeling. Millions of adults avoid trying new things for this exact reason. They are afraid of looking silly or being seen as slow. I once knew a woman in her late 40s who had a lifelong dream of learning to swim. She lived near the beach, but had never been able to enjoy the water. Yet, she never signed up for lessons. Why? Because she was deeply embarrassed by the thought of being the only adult beginner in a pool full of children. It wasn't her physical ability or her age that stopped her. It was the fear of being seen as behind. And then, there's perfectionism. This is the strong, often overwhelming desire to do everything perfectly right from the very beginning. On the surface, it sounds like a positive trait, doesn't it? Wanting to do your best, to strive for excellence. But perfectionism can actually be one of the biggest obstacles to learning. It creates an impossible standard. When you feel that every single sentence you speak in English must be grammatically perfect, with perfect pronunciation, you become afraid to speak at all. When you believe that every attempt at a new skill must be a success, you stop trying new things. When your goal is absolute perfection, even a tiny, insignificant mistake can feel like a total, catastrophic failure. Learning is messy. It's not a straight line of constant improvement. It's full of mistakes, and that's okay. Now, let me ask you to reflect on this. Where do these limiting thoughts come from? Were you born believing that you weren't good enough, or that you had to be perfect? Of course not. These ideas, these beliefs, they grew over time. They are often the result of negative experiences from our past or careless comments from others. Maybe a teacher in school once told you that you just weren't good at languages. Or maybe someone in your family said you were clumsy, so you never tried to play a sport. These old words, sometimes spoken decades ago, can still echo in our minds and affect how we see ourselves today. But here is the truly good news. Your beliefs about yourself and your ability to learn are not fixed. They are not set in stone. You have the power to change them. You can consciously build a new mindset, one that supports and encourages growth, instead of one that is rooted in fear. In fact, your mindset is often far more important than your age, your natural talent, or even your intelligence. Imagine two people who want to learn English. They have the exact same level of natural ability, but one person has a growth mindset. They believe that with effort, practice, and patience, they can improve. The other person has a fixed mindset. They believe they just aren't a language person, and that their ability is limited. Which person do you think will be more successful? The answer is obvious. Their results will be completely different. So, what exactly is a growth mindset? It's the simple but powerful belief that your abilities are not fixed. It's the understanding that you can improve over time through dedicated effort, consistent practice, and a healthy dose of patience. It doesn't mean that everything will be easy. It just means that you believe progress is always possible. And when you truly believe that, your behavior begins to change. You start to take more healthy risks. You give yourself permission to be a beginner, to be awkward and clumsy at first. You stop waiting for the day you'll be perfect, and you start enjoying the process of learning, with all its ups and downs. Remember this powerful truth. The only people who never make mistakes are the people who never try anything new. Making a mistake is not a sign that you are a failure. It is a sign that you are doing something brave. It's evidence that you are stretching yourself beyond your current limits. It is a sign that you are truly learning. I always tell my students that fluent English speakers are not perfect speakers. They make mistakes all the time. They are simply people who didn't quit when the process became uncomfortable or difficult. So the next time you feel that voice of doubt saying, "I can't do this," I want you to challenge it. Try asking yourself a different question. Ask, what if I could? What might happen if I just gave myself permission to try, permission to learn, permission to be imperfect? You see, the biggest wall that stands in your way is not outside of you. It's not your age. It's not your busy schedule. It's not your memory. The biggest wall is the one inside your mind. And once you begin to break that wall down, brick by brick, you will discover that there is a whole, vast world of learning still open and waiting for you. Stay with me, because in the next part of this episode, we're going to look at the exciting science behind learning in adulthood, and you'll discover why your brain might be much stronger and more flexible than you ever thought possible. Have you ever heard that old expression? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's one of those common sayings that people repeat without much thought, often when they believe it's too late for them or someone else to learn something new. The idea behind this phrase is simple, but also very limiting. It suggests that after you reach a certain age, your brain becomes rigid and fixed. It stops changing. You get stuck in your ways. According to this old saying, you can't grow, you can't change, you can't improve. But here is the wonderful, liberating truth. Modern science tells us a completely different story. In fact, we now know with absolute certainty that the adult brain is not only capable of learning, but it is designed to keep learning throughout our entire lives. There's a scientific name for this incredible ability of the brain. It's called neuroplasticity. Now, don't worry. That word might sound complicated and scientific, but the idea behind it is actually very simple and beautiful. Neuroplasticity simply means that your brain has the ability to change, to reorganize itself, and to adapt. No matter how old you are. Just like your muscles get stronger and bigger when you exercise them at the gym, your brain can create new connections and become stronger when you challenge it with new learning. Think of your brain like this. It's a living, dynamic system. It's not a finished product that was completed when you turned 25. It's more like a dense forest, full of pathways. When you learn a new skill, like playing the piano, learning to drive a car, or speaking a new language like English, your brain starts to build new connections between its cells, which are called neurons. These connections are like little roads or pathways inside your brain that carry information. The very first time you try a new skill, that pathway is weak and overgrown. It's hard to travel down. But the more you practice that skill, the more you use that new pathway, the stronger and faster and more efficient it becomes. It's very similar to walking through a patch of tall grass in a field. The first time you try to walk across, it's slow and difficult. You have to push your way through. The path is barely visible. But if you walk that same exact way every single day, what happens? That path becomes clearer. The grass gets trampled down. Eventually, it turns into a well-defined trail that is easy and fast to walk on. That is exactly what is happening inside your brain when you repeat something new. It's not an instant process. It takes time and repetition. But it works just as well when you are 60 as it does when you are 16. Of course, learning as an adult can feel different from learning as a child. It's true that children often seem to pick up new things, especially languages, very quickly. But this is often because of their environment, not just their brains. Children are in a full-time learning environment called school. They are immersed in new information for hours every day. They also don't have the same emotional barriers that adults do. A 5-year-old isn't worried about their accent sounding strange or making a grammar mistake. They just talk. They play with the language. Adults, on the other hand, often bring a lot of extra baggage to the learning process. We compare ourselves to other people. We judge our progress much more harshly. We are afraid of looking foolish. But that doesn't mean adults can't learn effectively. In fact, adults have some very clear and powerful advantages over children. We have more life experience to connect new information to. We often have a much stronger ability to focus for long periods. And most importantly, we usually have a deeper, more personal motivation for learning. Our why is stronger. Let me share something fascinating with you. In numerous studies on brain activity, scientists have used advanced imaging technology to watch the brains of adults in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s as they learn new, complex skills. One famous series of experiments involved teaching older adults how to juggle. Now, juggling is a complex skill that requires hand-eye coordination, timing, and focus. After just a few weeks of daily practice, brain scans of these older adults showed visible changes. New gray matter had actually grown in the areas of the brain connected to movement and coordination. That is neuroplasticity in action. It is concrete, physical proof that the brain continues to respond, to adapt, and to grow, even decades after our formal education has ended. Now, this scientific fact doesn't mean that learning is always going to feel easy. Just like lifting weights at the gym for the first time in years can make your muscles feel sore. Using your brain in a new and challenging way can be tiring at first. You may feel frustrated. You may feel like you're slow. But that feeling of struggle is part of the process. Struggle is not a sign of failure. It's a sign that your brain is working hard, building those new pathways. Every time you push through a difficult grammar concept, every time you practice a word you find hard to pronounce, your mental muscles are getting a little bit stronger. Let's go back to the metaphor of the brain as a muscle. If you've ever decided to get in shape and gone to the gym after a long break, you probably felt quite sore the next day. That soreness is a sign of growth. Your muscle fibers were being broken down so they could be rebuilt stronger. The exact same thing happens with your brain when you use it in new ways. You might feel mentally tired, a bit confused, or even overwhelmed when you're learning something complex like a new language. But if you persist, if you keep going, you are building mental strength. You start to feel more confident, more capable, and the task that once felt impossible starts to feel manageable. Here's another important thing to keep in mind. Learning is not a race. There is no finish line. You do not have to learn as fast as the person next to you. Progress is deeply personal. One person might find it easy to learn new grammar rules, but struggle for months with pronunciation. Another person might start speaking with fluency very quickly, but take a much longer time to understand complex written texts. And that's perfectly okay. There is no such thing as a perfect learner. There is only consistent effort and the courage to keep going, day after day. So, the next time you hear someone say, "I'm too old for this," or worse, if you catch yourself thinking it, I want you to remember the science. Remember neuroplasticity. Your brain doesn't know how old you are. It doesn't check your birth certificate. It only knows what you do with it. If you give it something new and challenging to do, like learning English, or trying a new recipe, or studying a topic that genuinely excites you, it will respond. It will adapt. It will grow. That isn't magic. That is science. And honestly, isn't that an exciting and empowering thought? It means your brain is not stuck. It means your story is still being written. It means that you are capable of learning far more than you ever thought possible. Not just because you are strong or smart, but because you are human. And human beings are born to be lifelong learners. In the next part of our episode, I'm going to share some detailed, real stories of people who started learning something completely new much later in life. These are stories that might remind you of yourself, because sometimes the most powerful and convincing lessons come not from abstract theories or scientific research, but from the simple, honest experiences of real people who looked at their lives and said, "Why not now?" So, stay with me and get ready to be inspired. Let me tell you a few stories. These aren't stories about famous people or gifted geniuses. These are real-life stories about everyday people. People just like you and me. They are stories that show how incredibly powerful it can be to say yes to learning, no matter what your age is. These individuals decided to start something new later in life. And in doing so, they changed not just what they could do, but how they saw themselves and their place in the world. Our first story is about a man named Arthur. Arthur had worked as an accountant for over 40 years. His life was one of numbers, spreadsheets, and predictable routines. It was a good life, but a quiet one. When he retired at the age of 67, he found himself with a lot of empty time. His days felt long and unstructured. One afternoon, while cleaning out his attic, he found an old, dusty guitar that had belonged to his son years ago. He plucked one of the strings, and the dull sound echoed in the quiet room. A thought popped into his head. I always wished I had learned to play an instrument. Immediately, another thought followed. But it's too late now. My fingers are too old and stiff. He almost put the guitar back in its case. But for some reason, that day, he didn't. He took it downstairs. That small decision was the beginning of a new chapter in his life. He started by watching free tutorial videos on the internet. The first few weeks were incredibly frustrating. His fingers felt clumsy and weak. He couldn't make the chords sound clean. It was just a buzzing, unpleasant noise. He felt foolish, sitting there alone in his living room, struggling with something that teenagers seem to do so easily. Many times, he thought about quitting, but he made a simple promise to himself: just 15 minutes a day, no matter what. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, something began to change. One day, he played a C chord, and it sounded clear. It was just one chord, but to him, it felt like a huge victory. That small success gave him the motivation to keep going. He started to learn simple songs. The first song he learned took him an entire month. Now, 5 years later, Arthur plays the guitar every single day. He's not a rock star. He won't be playing in any concerts, but he sits on his porch in the evenings and plays old folk songs. His grandchildren come over and sit with him, and they sing along. The music fills his home with joy. Arthur didn't just learn to play the guitar. He learned that his capacity for growth hadn't ended with his career. He found a new passion that brought meaning and connection to his retirement years, all because he decided to pick up that dusty guitar at the age of 67. Now, let me tell you about Maria. Maria was a 55-year-old librarian. She loved books. She loved the smell of old paper and the quiet, peaceful atmosphere of the library. But the world around her was changing rapidly. The library was becoming more digital. There were e-books, online databases, and computer systems she didn't understand. She felt anxious and incompetent. She felt like she was being left behind by technology. She was afraid of becoming irrelevant. One day, her library offered a free introductory course on basic web design for all employees. Maria's first reaction was fear. She thought, "I can't do that. I can barely use my smartphone. That's for young people." She was terrified, but a small part of her knew she had to try. She signed up for the course. On the first day, she walked into the classroom and saw that she was, by at least 2 decades, the oldest person there. Her heart sank. The instructor started talking about HTML, CSS, and code, words that sounded like a foreign language to her. For the first few classes, she felt completely lost. She was sure everyone else understood it better than she did. She almost dropped out. But her instructor, a patient young woman, noticed her struggle. After class one day, she said to Maria, "Nobody is born knowing this stuff. Every expert was once a beginner. Just focus on one small thing at a time." Maria took that advice to heart. She stopped comparing herself to the younger students. She stayed late after class to ask questions. She practiced at home, writing simple lines of code over and over again. It was slow and difficult work. But then, one day, she created her first web page. It was very simple. It just had a title and one sentence: But when she saw it appear on the screen, a creation she had made with her own hands, she felt a rush of pride she hadn't felt in years. She kept learning. Today, Maria is not only comfortable with the library's digital systems, she's the person other staff members go to for help. She even volunteered to build a simple, beautiful website for a local animal shelter. Maria learned more than just coding. She learned that she was still capable of mastering the modern world. She regained her confidence and found a new sense of purpose, all because she was brave enough to be the oldest student in the room. And finally, there's the story of Kenji, a 48-year-old man from Japan. Kenji's daughter had married a wonderful man from Mexico, and they had a young child together. Kenji loved his son-in-law and his grandson. But there was a barrier between them: language. His son-in-law's family spoke Spanish, and Kenji only spoke Japanese and a little bit of basic English. When they all got together for family gatherings, Kenji felt like an outsider. He couldn't understand their jokes. He couldn't participate in their stories. He could only smile and nod. He desperately wanted to connect with them on a deeper level. So, at the age of 48, he decided to learn Spanish. He had a full-time job and a busy life, so he knew he couldn't spend hours studying. He started with a mobile app, practicing for just 20 minutes on the train during his commute to work every morning. At first, it was incredibly hard. The pronunciation felt strange in his mouth. He was embarrassed to practice speaking out loud. He often forgot the same word 5 or 6 times. But he didn't stop. His motivation was powerful. He wasn't just learning a language, he was building a bridge to his family. After a year of this slow, consistent practice, his son-in-law's family came to visit. At the dinner table, his son-in-law's mother was telling a story in Spanish. Kenji listened carefully. He didn't understand every word, but he understood the main idea. And at the end of the story, he was able to ask a simple question in Spanish. The table went silent for a moment. Then, his son-in-law's mother's face broke into a huge, beautiful smile. She answered his question, speaking slowly and clearly. For the rest of the evening, they included him in the conversation. It was simple, broken Spanish, but it was a real conversation. In that moment, Kenji felt a connection so profound it brought tears to his eyes. He is still learning, and he is not fluent, but he can now talk to his grandson in Spanish. He can share stories with his new family. These stories are not about rare talent or incredible luck. They are about one simple, important choice: the choice to try, the choice to be a brave beginner, even when it feels uncomfortable. And what's so beautiful is that Arthur, Maria, and Kenji all found something much more valuable than just a new skill. They found new confidence. They found new meaning. They found a new part of themselves that they didn't know existed. So, I want to ask you to think about your own life. What would your life look like if you said yes to learning something new right now? Would you feel more confident, more connected, more alive? Maybe you've been thinking about something for a long time. Improving your English, learning a musical instrument, taking up a new sport, or even going back to school to get a degree. Maybe a part of you still thinks it's too late. But what if it's not? What if your best years of learning haven't already passed you by? What if they're just beginning? When people talk about learning, Their focus often lands on children and young students in schools and universities. And it's certainly true that young people are incredible learners. Their brains are like sponges, still developing and absorbing information at a rapid pace. They typically have more free time, fewer responsibilities, and are completely accustomed to the structure of formal education. But does this reality mean that adults are somehow at a disadvantage? Does it mean we can't learn just as well? Or perhaps, in some ways, even better? Not at all. The truth is, adults learn differently, and these differences can be enormous advantages. First and foremost, as an adult, you bring something incredibly valuable to any learning process, and that is your own rich tapestry of life experience. You have navigated challenges. You have solved complex problems both at work and at home. You have learned how to manage your time, how to work with different kinds of people, and how to stay calm and persistent when things get difficult. All of these are high-level skills, and they directly help you learn more effectively. When you study something new as an adult, you don't start from a blank slate. You have a vast network of existing knowledge. You can connect new ideas to things you already know, which helps you understand and remember them more deeply. You don't start from zero. You start with a deep and nuanced understanding of how the world works. Another powerful strength that many adult learners possess is discipline. As a child, you might have studied only because someone told you to, a teacher, a parent, or the demands of a school schedule. The motivation was often external, but as an adult, you choose to learn. That simple act of choosing makes a world of difference. You are often more self-directed, which means you take ownership and control of your own learning journey. You are the one who decides when to study, how to study, and what to study. And because it is your personal choice, born from your own desires, you often care much more about the results. You are invested in your own success. This leads us to something psychologists call intrinsic motivation. This is a powerful term used to describe the kind of motivation that comes from within you, not from an external reward or pressure. You're not learning English because someone is forcing you to, or because you'll get a sticker on a chart. You're learning because you have a personal reason, a dream you want to achieve, a goal you want to reach, or a strong internal desire to improve yourself. When your motivation comes from this deep, internal place, it is often far more powerful and sustainable than any outside pressure. It's the fuel that will keep you going when things get tough. And let's not forget one more crucial element. As adults, we have the capacity to consciously cultivate a growth mindset. You've heard me mention this phrase before, and it's worth repeating because it's so important. A growth mindset is the belief that your abilities are not fixed entities. It's the understanding that your skills can be developed and improved with focused effort and persistence. You don't believe that you are either good or bad at something. You know that if you work hard and stay consistent, you will make progress. This mindset is like a superpower for learning. It helps you face difficulties with courage instead of despair. It keeps you from giving up when you hit a plateau or when things get tough. And they always do at some point in any meaningful learning journey. Now, of course, it's also important to acknowledge the real challenges that adults face. You might have significantly less free time than you did as a student. You might feel more tired at the end of a long day of work. You might feel a much greater sense of embarrassment about making mistakes in front of others. But these are not reasons to stop learning. In fact, these are the very things that make your progress even more meaningful and inspiring. When you succeed as an adult learner, it's not just because you have some natural talent. It's because of your deliberate effort, your unwavering focus, and your inner strength. Your success is earned. Think for a moment about all the complex things you already know how to do. Things you had no idea how to do when you were younger. Maybe you've learned how to manage a household budget, how to raise children, how to use complex technology for your job, or how to navigate difficult social situations. All of those things required learning. You didn't know how to do them at first, but you figured it out. You learned through trial and error, through observation, and through practice. That is concrete proof that you can learn, and that you have been learning, again and again, throughout your entire life. So if you are learning English now, or perhaps planning to start, I want you to remember this. You are not starting from scratch. You already possess a powerful toolkit of skills and strengths. Your age is not your enemy. It's actually one of your greatest assets. You bring focus, you bring discipline, and you bring a strong personal reason to keep going. Let me leave you with a question to think about. What specific strengths do you already have that could help you learn more effectively today? Are you a very organized person? That can help you create a study plan. Are you very patient? That can help you get through the difficult early stages. Are you a really good listener? Or do you enjoy reading? Perhaps you've learned another complex skill before, like cooking or gardening, and you already know how to break a big project down into small, manageable steps. Whatever your strengths are, I encourage you to recognize them and use them. Your learning journey does not have to look like anyone else's. It is uniquely yours, and you are already far better prepared for it than you think. Now that we've talked about the incredible strengths that adult learners possess, let's take an honest moment to talk about the things that often hold us back. Because the truth is, even when we are perfectly capable of learning something new, we don't always try. Why is that? The answer is often not logical, but emotional. There are three common obstacles that show up again and again in the lives of adult learners: self-doubt, perfectionism, and fear. Let's start with self-doubt. This is that small, nagging voice in the back of your head. The one that whispers, "I'm not good enough for this," or "I'm not smart enough to do this." It can appear at any moment. It might show up when you're trying to speak in English and you suddenly forget a simple word. It might surface when you're looking at a grammar book and a concept just doesn't make sense. Or it might creep in when you compare yourself to other learners who seem younger, faster, or more confident than you are. Self-doubt has a way of making you feel like an imposter, like an outsider in the world of learning, as if you don't really belong there. But here is a fundamental truth. Everyone experiences doubt. Even the people who seem incredibly confident on the outside are often battling their own insecurities on the inside. It is completely normal to feel unsure of yourself when you are stepping into new territory, Learning something new is, by definition, a process of moving from not knowing to knowing. It takes time, patience, and a lot of practice. But just because you feel doubt doesn't mean you should stop. Doubt is just a feeling. It is not a fact about your abilities. You can feel the doubt, acknowledge it, and still take the next step forward. Now, let's talk about the second obstacle, perfectionism. Perfectionism is the belief that you must get everything right all the time. No mistakes, no errors, just perfect results from the very beginning. For adult learners, this can be a very serious problem that completely paralyzes progress. Many adults are terrified of making mistakes, especially when they are speaking a new language. They think, "What if I use the wrong word and someone misunderstands me?" Or, "What if people laugh at my accent?" But let me tell you something incredibly important. Mistakes are not your enemy. Mistakes are your teacher. They are an essential part of the learning process. In fact, they help you learn faster. Every single time you make a mistake and get corrected, your brain is learning what not to do. You are getting stronger, smarter, and more flexible. Perfection is not the goal. Progress is the goal. There's a common saying in English that is perfect for this situation. Better late than never. It means that starting something now, even if you feel you are behind, is infinitely better than never starting at all. Another idiom that many adults can relate to is the feeling of being stuck in a rut. This describes the experience of doing the same thing over and over again, day after day, without any change or personal growth. Sometimes we stay stuck in that rut because we are afraid to take the risk of trying something new and not being perfect at it. We wait for the perfect moment to start, but that moment never seems to arrive. And that brings us to the third and perhaps biggest obstacle: fear. The fear of failure. The fear of being judged by others. The fear of looking foolish. Fear is one of the primary reasons that people stop themselves from learning new things. It's an incredibly powerful emotion, and it often hides behind more acceptable excuses. We say things like, "I'm just too busy right now," or "I'll start next month when things are less crazy." But if we are really honest with ourselves, sometimes what we are really saying is, "I'm scared." Have you ever stopped yourself from doing something because you didn't want to look foolish? Be honest with yourself. Maybe you didn't raise your hand to ask a question in a class because you were afraid it was a stupid question and that you would be judged as unintelligent. Maybe you avoided joining that English conversation group online because you thought your accent wasn't good enough and that native speakers would laugh. These fears feel very real in the moment, but they do not have to control your decisions. Here is something useful to remember. People are not thinking about you and your mistakes nearly as much as you think they are. The truth is, most people are far too busy thinking about their own lives, their own problems, their own mistakes, and their own insecurities. And those rare people who do take the time to laugh or judge someone who is trying to learn, they are not the kind of people you need to impress anyway. What truly matters is your effort, not your level of perfection. Instead of letting fear stop you in your tracks, try to adopt the mindset of feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Speak up in your English class, even if your voice trembles a little. Ask that question, even if you're nervous. Take one small, imperfect step forward. That is how real, meaningful learning happens. Not by being perfect, but by being brave. So, if you've been waiting for the right time to start something new, learning English, taking a course, trying a hobby, I want you to ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? And then, even more importantly, ask, what could my life look like if I decided to try anyway? You are not too old, and you are not too late. You are simply standing at the beginning of something new. The only real question is, are you ready to begin? Let's talk now about one of the most powerful tools in learning, and also one of the most underrated, consistency. So many people believe that to succeed at something new, you need a huge amount of natural talent, or endless free time, or some kind of special skill that other people don't have. But that's not always true. In fact, the simple act of taking one small step every single day is often far more effective than taking a giant leap once in a while. You don't need to completely overhaul your life or study for hours and hours. What you truly need is the quiet discipline to keep going, even on the days when your progress feels incredibly slow. There's a famous English expression that perfectly captures this idea. Slow and steady wins the race. It comes from an old story about a fast rabbit and a slow tortoise. The rabbit was so confident in his speed that he took a long nap during the race, while the slow tortoise just kept moving forward, step by steady step, and eventually won. The moral is that being consistent, doing something little by little over a long period, can lead to huge and surprising results. Think of learning a new skill like building a great wall out of bricks. If you commit to laying just one single brick perfectly each day, over time, your wall will grow higher and stronger. It will become a formidable structure. But if you wait until you have a whole weekend free and then try to build the entire wall in one day, you will quickly become exhausted and overwhelmed, and you will probably give up before you've even made much progress. Learning works in exactly the same way. It's not about doing everything today. It's about doing something today. Let me give you a few simple, practical examples of this principle in action. Imagine if you decided to learn just 5 new English words every day. That doesn't sound like much, does it? It might only take you 10 or 15 minutes. You could do it while you drink your morning coffee. But let's look at the power of consistency. 5 words a day adds up to 35 words a week. That's over 150 words a month. And over the course of a single year, that simple, small habit adds up to more than 1,800 new words. That is a massive boost to your vocabulary. And it all comes from a tiny daily habit that is easy to maintain. Or think about practicing your English speaking for just 10 minutes a day. You could do it by recording your voice on your phone and talking about your day. You could listen to a short segment of a podcast and repeat the sentences out loud. Or you could find a language partner online and agree to speak for just 10 minutes every day. It doesn't have to be a perfect, hour-long conversation. It just has to be regular. The most important thing is to stay consistent. That means showing up and doing it every single day, or on most days, even if it's just for a short amount of time. Some days will definitely be harder than others. You might feel tired after a long day at work. You might feel busy with family commitments. You might feel unmotivated and just not in the mood. But showing up and doing your small task even when you don't feel like it is what separates success from failure. It's what builds momentum. It's just like going to the gym. One single workout doesn't transform your body. But many small, consistent workouts over time absolutely will. The same is true for your mind and your language skills. Here's another helpful expression in English. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. This is a powerful piece of wisdom. It means that you don't have to do everything perfectly. You just need to do it. If you aim for a perfect study session, you might never start because the conditions are never quite right. But if you can accept a good enough 10-minute session, you can begin right now, and you can build from there. Consistency also builds something else that is incredibly important: confidence. When you consistently show up for yourself every day, even in these small ways, you begin to build a relationship of trust with yourself. You start to believe in your own ability to follow through. You feel more in control of your own progress. And when you start to see real, tangible progress, no matter how small, that progress itself becomes a source of motivation. It's a beautiful, positive cycle. A small action leads to a small result, which gives you more motivation to take another small action. So I want you to ask yourself, right now, what is one small, manageable thing you could do today to get just a little bit closer to your learning goal? Maybe it's writing one short paragraph in English about your day. Maybe it's listening to one English song and looking up the lyrics. Maybe it's using 5 new vocabulary words in a real conversation with someone. It doesn't need to be big or impressive. It just needs to happen today. And then again tomorrow. And the day after that. And here is a question for you to really think about and maybe even write down your answer to. What small habit could you start today that would make a huge difference in your life a year from now? It could be as simple as reading one page of a book in English every night before you go to sleep, or keeping a small notebook to write down new words, or repeating short conversations out loud while you're making breakfast. You don't have to do everything at once. Just start with one thing. Because the truth is, natural talent is a helpful thing to have, but it is not what ultimately creates success. What truly works, in learning and in life, is the quiet, unglamorous work of showing up again and again and again, even when no one else is watching, even when the progress feels painfully slow, even when you make mistakes. The people who succeed in the long run are not always the smartest or the most talented. They are the most consistent. So, take a deep breath. Look at your day, and just choose one small step. Then, take it. That is how real, lasting change begins. Let's now talk about something that is even more important than your age: the amount of free time you have, or even your past experiences with education. Let's talk about your mindset. Your mindset is the collection of beliefs and attitudes you hold about yourself and your ability to learn. It's that inner voice, the narrator of your personal story, that says either, "I can do this if I work at it," or "It's too late for me." So many people stop themselves from learning new and exciting things, not because of their actual age, but because of their limiting mindset about age. They genuinely believe that they are too old, too slow, or not smart enough. But as we've discussed, that is simply not supported by science. The reality is that your brain is designed to learn and grow at any age, as long as you keep your mind open to the possibility. It's not your chronological age that stops you. It's the belief that age is a barrier. That belief can become a psychological wall that you build around yourself, brick by brick, with every negative thought. But if you can begin to dismantle that wall, if you can open your mind, you can achieve truly amazing things. One key word to focus on here is open-minded. Being open-minded means you are willing and ready to accept new ideas and to try new things, even if they seem strange or difficult at first. It means you resist the urge to say, "I already know everything about this," or "This is not for people like me." Instead, an open-minded person asks questions. They are curious. They stay flexible in their thinking. Another incredibly important word is curiosity. Curious people are lifelong learners by nature. They are always looking for something new to understand or a new skill to explore. They don't let the fear of not knowing something stop them from asking. They don't feel embarrassed to ask what they might think is a simple question. And most importantly, they find joy in the process of learning itself, even when it's slow, messy, or difficult. If you can keep your natural sense of curiosity alive, you will never run out of motivation to move forward. But let's be honest, learning isn't always a joyful and easy process. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes we forget what we learned yesterday. Sometimes we feel completely stuck and make no progress for weeks. This is where the quality of resilience becomes absolutely essential. Resilience is the ability to keep going even when things are tough. It's the inner strength that allows you to bounce back from setbacks. It's like a strong, flexible tree that bends in a powerful storm, but doesn't break. When you are resilient, you learn from your mistakes instead of feeling ashamed of them. You see them as data, as information that can help you improve. You don't give up. You simply adjust your strategy and try again. Many adult learners are far too hard on themselves. They constantly compare their progress to that of other people. They feel terrible when they make a mistake, or when they don't understand something as quickly as they think they should. But let me ask you this. Are you judging yourself more harshly than anyone else actually is? The vast majority of people are not laughing at you. Most people are not watching your every move, waiting for you to fail. In fact, many people probably admire you for having the courage to try, because it's something they are too afraid to do themselves. We need to stop being our own biggest critic. Instead, we must learn to become our own biggest supporter and cheerleader. You need to learn to talk to yourself in the same way you would talk to a good friend who was struggling. You would be kind. You would be patient. You would encourage them. You would tell them to be proud of their effort, not just the final result. When you start to see yourself as a learner on a journey, not as a failure, not as too old, not as too late, then real, sustainable progress becomes possible. Think about this for a moment. Young children don't worry about making mistakes when they learn. They try to build a tower. It falls down. They laugh, and they try to build it again. That is why they learn so quickly. They are not afraid of the process. As adults, we often become too serious. We worry too much. We want to be perfect before we've even started. But perfection is an illusion. Learning is the real goal. So, how can you start to rebuild that mindset? To think like a learner again? First, you must consciously work to let go of the fear of judgment. Give yourself explicit permission to be a beginner, to be clumsy and awkward. Second, actively cultivate your curiosity. Ask questions. Explore topics you're interested in. Read, listen, and watch things just for the joy of learning something new. Third, practice resilience. When something doesn't go well, when you have a bad study day, don't see it as a reason to stop. See it as part of the path. Just take a deep breath. Adjust your plan for tomorrow, and try again. You have a choice every single day. You can wake up and say, "I'm too old to learn this." Or you can say, "I'm excited to see what I can learn today." You can make a mistake and say, "I'm no good at this." Or you can say, "Okay, that didn't work. I'm just getting started. What can I try differently?" That choice, the way you narrate your own story to yourself, makes all the difference in the world. Remember, it's not the young brain that learns best. It's the open brain, the curious brain, and the resilient brain. If you can keep your mindset in that positive, growth-oriented place, your age will never be a barrier. In fact, with age comes wisdom, experience, a deeper understanding of the world, and greater patience, all of which are incredibly powerful tools for learning. So, today, I invite you to ask yourself again, are you judging yourself more harshly than anyone else is? And then, make a conscious decision to believe in your own incredible ability to grow, at any age, with any background, and always at your own perfect pace. That is the real secret to a life of joyful, lifelong learning. As we come to the end of this episode, let's take a quiet moment to reflect on the most important message we've shared today. It's never too late to start learning. It doesn't matter what your age is, what your past experiences have been, or what your current level of skill is. If you have the desire to begin, you are already on the right path. Learning something new, whether it's a language like English, a practical skill for your job, or even just a new way of thinking about the world, doesn't require you to be perfect. It just requires a simple decision to take that first, small step. You've heard today that your mindset matters far more than your age. That real progress begins the very moment you stop saying, "I can't," and you start saying, "I'll try." You've learned that curiosity, resilience, and a mind that is open to new experiences are infinitely more powerful than the fear of judgment, the whispers of self-doubt, or the paralysis of perfectionism. And most of all, I hope you've been reminded that you are not behind anyone else. You are on your own unique journey, moving at your own unique pace. Now, I would like to ask you to pause for a moment and reflect. Ask yourself this question: what is something I have been putting off? Something I've wanted to learn or do because I thought it was too late. And then ask yourself a second question. What is one small, manageable step I can take today, right now, to move towards that thing I've always wanted to do? Maybe it's finally committing to improving your English. Maybe it's practicing your speaking without being afraid of making mistakes. Maybe it's as simple as reading the first page of a book in English, or signing up for that online course you've been looking at, or just having a short, 5-minute conversation with someone. Whatever it is, I encourage you to take that step today. You don't have to change your entire life all at once. You don't have to be fast. You just have to move forward. Even the slowest steps will eventually take you somewhere amazing. And over time, you will look back in awe and see just how far you've come. Not because the journey was easy, but because you were brave enough not to give up. Thank you so much for spending this time with me here at English in Fluency. I know your time is valuable, and that you could be doing many other things. I truly appreciate that you chose to listen and to invest in yourself. That single action tells me one very important thing about you. You care about your own growth, and that is a truly beautiful and inspiring thing. If this episode touched you in some way, or gave you something helpful to think about, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Please share your thoughts, your feelings, or even your own personal story in the comments section. What are you learning right now? What will your next small step be? Your message could be the exact words of encouragement that someone else who is listening needs to hear today. Someone who is feeling the exact same way you do. And remember this, always, you are not behind. You are not too old. You are not too late. You are just beginning. And that is a wonderful, hopeful place to be. Every expert, every fluent speaker, every skilled artist, they all started at the very beginning. You are not alone on this path. You are part of a massive, brave, global community of learners who are choosing growth over fear and action over excuses. So, go ahead. Believe in yourself a little more today. Start small. Stay curious. Be kind to yourself along the way. And just keep going. You've got this.